everybody, and welcome to another episode of Malone Bailey's official podcast, Everybody Counts. Thanks for tuning in today. I'm Caroline Rosen, and I am from the marketing department here at Malone Bailey. So we've got this podcast, Everybody Counts, and it features various perspectives on a variety of different topics. So whether we're talking about the latest SEC and FASB updates to discussions on soft skills, practice management, recruiting, retention, and much more, Everybody Counts explores trends and hot topics that affect us and those in our business. And, you know, we love for you to tune in. We invite you to tune in and hear from partners and staff alike. The conversation is versatile and everybody's input counts. Today's podcast focuses on a really interesting topic. And I'm going to get into that topic in just a moment. I'm delighted to be joined today by a special guest, Travis Moffitt, who is a tax manager here at Malone Bailey. Welcome, Travis. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi, Caroline. Absolutely. Thank you for having me on. Very excited to be on the podcast with you today.
We are delighted to have you on. And you know, as I mentioned, Travis is a tax manager, and today's topic focuses on the IRS's recently released Dirty Dozen Scams list for 2022. So Travis is really the perfect person to shed some light on the scams that are highlighted in this year's report. So thank you for being here, Travis. Before we jump into the topic at hand, would you mind just giving our listeners a quick overview of your educational and professional background?
Yes, absolutely. So as far as education goes, I attended the University of Houston, and it's actually interesting. I started as an engineering major.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I was doing that for a couple of semesters, and then eventually reached Calculus 4, and that's kind of when I realized, you know, maybe this isn't the path I should go down.
Well, you know, sometimes an elimination is just as good as a confirmation, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So at that point, I kind of just made the decision like, well, okay, I'm good with numbers, like, you know, so what else can I, you know, sort of be doing? And, you know, eventually came to the decision that, you know, accounting would probably be good for me. And so ended up graduating with a BBBA, focused in accounting. And then after school, I actually started working for the government, the Franchise Tax Board for California.
Okay.
And what's interesting is they have an office located in Houston. So I was actually working based in Houston, but for the state of California.
That is interesting. Huh. Okay.
Yeah. I always get asked like, oh, so you were in California? It's like, yeah, no, they actually do have an office in Houston, and actually several different hubs like Chicago and New York and whatnot. You know, places where a lot of high income taxpayers for that state might also be located.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and I was there for about 6 months. And it kind of got to the point where I realized it just wasn't for me. So, decided to kind of change directions, and found public accounting. And I started my career at a local mid-sized firm, formerly known as MRZ.
Okay.
And got a lot of experience in high net worth, and also doing pass-through entities, you know, various industries and whatnot. Met a lot of great people, really enjoyed my time there. And then in 2018, sort of made a personal decision that, you know, maybe it's time to move to a new place, just because I grew up in Houston my whole life and attended school here as well. So, you know, thought it would be best to sort of move to a new state and city and sort of just gain some new experiences. So, and I'm an outdoors kind of person. So what really interested me was Los Angeles.
Okay.
Great weather, hiking, the beach. I mean, you name it. There's so many things that you can do there. So, so packed up and, went to Los Angeles, was there for about a year and a half, and started working for a mid-sized firm over there known as Greenhouse and Jenks.
Okay.
And was still, sort of focused on high net worth, individuals and doing a lot of trusts and stuff like that. But then also doing a lot of pass-through entities, mostly real estate partnerships, but then also construction manufacturing and because it's LA, got a little exposure to the entertainment industry as well. So so it was a good experience.
Yes.
And then at the top of 2020, I guess I started to get a little homesick and wanted to be back close with family. So decided to move back and was working remotely for about the past 2 years or so before I came over here to Malone Bailey. So
we're so glad to have you here, Travis.
Yeah, it's great to be here. I've really enjoyed the team that I work with. They're very accommodating and I think it's going to be really a great fit here. I'm really looking forward to it.
So tell our listeners just a little bit, just in a few lines, what will you be focusing on here in the tax world?
Yeah, so I think what I'll be focusing on is, helping people in the high net worth area, individuals, trusts, also the real estate industry. Obviously real estate is something that's big in most places. So I think, that's a good area for us to focus on. And then also construction manufacturing, things of that nature. And
okay.
Yep.
Okay, great. Wonderful. Well, let's go ahead. And again, thank you for providing that background for us. Let's go ahead and jump into the Dirty Dozen Scams list for 2022. So what exactly is this list?
So this list is sort of a way of just keeping taxpayers and the tax professional community aware of certain scams and schemes that the IRS has been seeing in the current climate. This is sort of a list that the IRS has been putting together on an annual basis for over 20 years now. It's just a great tool for people that aren't sort of, involved in everyday, tax administration to just sort of know, what's out there. And I think it's a great tool that that the IRS kind of puts out there for people.
Right. And why is this list so important?
So I would say it just raises awareness. Like I said, among an audience that is not always sort of involved in tax. And then, it's just being aware that there's various methods that these criminals will sort of use to trick you into giving away sensitive information or perhaps even your money. They do this they might send you bogus emails or text messages or even call you over the phone. And, something that taxpayers should know is that the IRS, never uses these methods to contact people. So as long as people are aware of that, that's sort of a way for them to avoid getting pulled into this.
Okay, great. So I know in just a minute, we're going to go into the highlights of the 2022 list, but can you share with us a little bit about how this year's list compares to previous year's lists?
Absolutely. So I think this year,
particular focus this year that you're noticing?
Yeah, I would say this year, I think the IRS is sort of homing in on individuals and particularly high income individuals that are sort of participating in these abusive schemes as part of an effort to either avoid or significantly reduce their taxes.
Okay.
And then some examples that I can give that the IRS is focusing on is, high income people that are not filing tax returns or participating in a abusive conservation easement scheme. Maybe also concealing assets in offshore bank accounts, and also improper reporting of digital assets. Those are just, sort of a few examples. And the IRS is improving their processes through data analytics and enhanced document matching. It's really improved their work in these areas.
Okay, great. So let's dive into the highlights of the 2022 list.
Okay. So I think a common scam that the IRS is continuing to see is, crises that will affect most people. And, what immediately comes to mind there is the pandemic. And so, these scammers will use the pandemic as sort of a device to frighten or confuse people into handing over their information.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, as I mentioned before, they'll do this by either sending, phony emails or unexpected phone calls, or perhaps even sometimes through social media.
Uh-huh.
And then they use this information sometimes to try to file a fraudulent tax return, just hoping that a return has not already been filed under the Social Security number that they're trying to use. And that's something I've actually seen in the past as well. But just people just need to be aware of, these ways that these scammers are trying to reach people to get their money.
Okay. And are any other highlights that you wanted to include?
I think that's I think that's about it.
Okay. All right. Well, what key takeaways or action items do we need to keep top of mind based on the warnings in the 2022 list?
Great question. So I would say just, being cautious and aware, those are probably going to be your best lines of defense against these criminals that are, trying to steal your information. And then, anytime you receive a request for that sort of info, I think people should just always make sure to verify that these sources are legitimate and sort of ask themselves, does it make sense that, I would be providing this to this person, or does this look like, a verified source?
Right. And that's something that people could go to their CPA with as well to ask, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, clients can always ask, their CPAs, what sort of steps are we taking to make sure that the information I'm giving you is secure and, no threat of being, compromised.
Okay. Wonderful. So with that in mind, with going to your CPA in mind, what questions should taxpayers ask their CPAs as it pertains to the scams on this year's list?
Yeah, so I think some of the things they should ask, include what's the best way for me to send my information securely to sort of minimize the risk that my information is going to fall into the wrong hands. And I think, something I've seen in our industry is, firms are starting to put more processes in place to sort of make sure that, the information is protected, and stuff like that. So, and anytime someone sends information via email with sensitive information on it, there's always sort of a security risk. So I think another thing to ask is there a secure portal that I can send my information through to make sure that only you and I are seeing this?
Okay. Okay, great. That's very helpful. Thank you so much for sharing that insight with us. And
yeah, absolutely.
I've got just one last question, maybe two, before we
Okay.
wrap up. We're gonna switch gears a little bit. This is called our this or that section. This is where our guests choose between two options. The topic's going to be completely unrelated to the Dirty Dozen list.
Oh, fun.
So let's get started. Okay, so it's actually today is the first official day of summer. And so,
nice.
Yes, with that in mind, do you prefer a trip or a staycation?
Oh, definitely a trip. I would say sort of like a travel junkie. I love just traveling to different places. And
what are your favorite spots you've been to?
I think my best vacation spot was probably actually to Vietnam.
Okay.
I went on vacation there about 5 years ago now, but yeah, I went there with a couple of buddies of mine, and we were there for about a month, just, traveling throughout the country. Very nice people, very good food there.
That's what I heard.
Yeah, it's great. So that's definitely my favorite spot I've been to.
What's a wish list spot that you haven't been to?
Wish list? I would have to say Iceland.
Okay.
Something else about me is I recently got scuba certified.
Oh, congrats.
Yeah, thanks. It's exciting stuff. So, and in Iceland, they have those tectonic plates, and you can go scuba dive sort of in between the plates, and it's very clear water. So
very cool.
I've looked at some videos and everything, and it just looks beautiful.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure you'll make it there soon.
Yeah, hopefully.
Okay, so last one. With vacation comes time to do things that you may not always get to do on a regular day-to-day. So book or Kindle?
Say that again.
Book or Kindle could be a nice thing to do on vacation, read, but do you prefer to read with a real book or a Kindle?
I guess I would say a real book. It just feels, I don't know. I just like kind of making notes sometimes, and I just think it's easier to do it just handwritten on a book rather than an electronic device. So I would say book.
Yeah, good old-fashioned book. I hear you. I agree with you on that. Well, thank you, Travis. Thanks for playing along. We always have a lot of fun keeping our guests on our toes with our this or that section. And thank you so much for coming on today and sharing all that important information about the Dirty Dozen scams list for this year. We appreciate your time today.
All right. Thanks again, Caroline. Really appreciate you having me on. And yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, you'll have to come back on in the near future. We'll have to come up with another important conversation related to tax. So thank you again. And thank you to our listeners for tuning into our podcast. We hope you found today's conversation to be insightful and resourceful. Please do check out our website. That's www.malonebailey.com, where you can find other episodes of our podcast. Past versions of our newsletter containing important accounting and regulatory updates and lots of other great resources and information. So thank you for your time, everyone, and have a wonderful day. See you next time.